Hello everybody, SlimKirby here, and we are back yet again for another Mario Party ranking video. We are still in the very black sheep 3DS era, but of all the games that are a part of this handheld, this is probably the one I'm the most passionate about. Because, let me just say it, Mario Party Star Rush is very underappreciated. I understand it's not what people want from Mario Party, and I get that. But I at least respect them trying something different, and, in a sense, rebranding this title as more of a spin-off, as opposed to just continuing with the numbered installments like they did with Mario Party 9 and 10. And hey, unlike the car gimmick, I do think they had an interesting idea for this one, and repurposing the Toad Scramble mode into what would ultimately end up being Super Mario Party's Partner Party would be probably that game's biggest strength. So the potential was definitely not lost on me. The game also had a lot of fun and very interesting side modes, and the minigames, damn, I cannot forget about the minigames, which I guess is appropriate considering that this is what we are focusing on today. And funnily enough, of all the videos we have left, this is definitely going to be the shortest one, with only 53 minigames on display here. So let this be a nice breather before we ultimately get to the games with 100 minigames to rank. Anyway, for this list we have 26 free-for-alls, 12 boss minigames, 12 minigames from Coinathlon, and 3 Bowser Gauntlet games, which are only played in certain circumstances, but they are in the free play mode, so they do technically count. I also debated having Boo's Block Party, the Minesweeper Tower, and the rhythm game in here, but since they are treated as separate entities in the game overall, I decided against it. Although, you could make an argument for the Block Party game being this game's puzzle minigame. Maybe I'll hint at where these games would be at the end of the video, but I don't think I'll ultimately include them for this list. Just doesn't really make that much sense to me. But yeah, I think that's all I need to preface here, so let's get this started. Here's my minigame ranking for all the minigames in Mario Party Star Rush. I hope you guys enjoy, and as always, remember, while I am curious to see your opinion, please showcase that in a constructive and kind manner, and don't insult mine or others' opinions in the process. These lists are supposed to be subjective, guys. Remember that. But yeah, let's get going. Number 53. To all the people who hate that I put luck-based games at the very bottom of these lists, guess what? They are getting a slight reprieve this time, because my actual least favorite minigame, well, let's just say it absolutely blows. Well, quite literally, in fact. Blowboat Battle is the only game in this installment that uses the 3DS microphone. And although other minigames in other 3DS and DS titles use it at least somewhat decently, I don't know, for this one I've just never gotten it to work well. You have to not only blow effectively into the mic, but you also need to angle yourself so you're making efficient progress to the goal line, and it just doesn't feel that good to play for me. So much that I gotta give the bottom slot to this game this time around. Number 52, Fruit or Foe. See, this is why I said a slight reprieve. This game is luck-based, therefore I am not amused or impressed. Number 51, Greedy Eats. I appreciate the mind game aspect of this minigame, in the sense that it's not entirely luck-based, but ultimately you have no control over what the result is here, due to what the other players pick. Plus, with only 2 plates, there is not a whole lot of variation here. Number 50, Corkscrew Climb. As a fan of Mario Party 7's Fun Run, I kinda wish this game was structured more like that than this. The person in front has a huge disadvantage due to screen crunch and being able to react in time with each jump. And if you mess up at the very end, there's no escaping a last place finish, which is very unfortunate. Good idea, but not a great execution-based minigame. Number 49, Wheelin' and Wigglin'. This game honestly should be better than what it is. Basically a game where you need to boost into the other players to shrink the size of their Wiggler-mobile. The problem is that the vehicle itself controls very awkwardly, and the camera only shows so much of the action, so it's easy to not only lose track of your opponents, but also just to get sidewinded by them without expecting it. Again, great idea, horrendous execution. Number 48, Jewel Janitors. What is this, the great idea, bad execution section? Once again, I think this game could have worked, but it just kind of turns into, well, nothing after a while. You have to try and suction up as many jewels to your side of the arena before the clock runs out. The problem is, all the jewels just kind of end up in a giant huddled mess in the center, and it just kind of feels like the winner gets chosen by luck at the end. You have to moderate your use of the vacuum too, as continuous use will weaken your pull, but even with that in mind, I just don't think it works very well. Also, the amps just seem kind of unnecessary for this one. Number 47, Blockbusters. Think of Mosh Pit Playroom from Mario Party 8, but much worse. Not that the game is bad necessarily, just kind of underwhelming. You have to shoot all the blocks of your own color in a giant block structure, but in order to target all of the blocks, the structure needs to come tumbling down. Meaning, even if you are quick and accurate enough to get all of your blocks on screen, you almost have to let your opponents get points before you get more, meaning the ending can come down to someone sniping away your victory at the last second, which I'm definitely not a fan of. The idea had potential at least, but I'm not a huge fan of it. Number 46, Bowser's Power Bomb. The first of 3 Bowser Gauntlet games, games that you will likely only see in long rounds of Coinathlon. This is a very basic survival game where you must dodge not only Bob-omb explosions, but also be careful of the tilting platform you're standing on whenever a bomb does explode. Really, this game is nothing special. Not bad, mind you, but not really that exciting either. Number 45, Contour de Force. Honestly, probably the most interesting use of this concept, but I still could probably do without it. The contours rotate around based on the button inputs of the players, and if they stop in front of another player, safe to say that player is getting pecked. There is a health system for this game too, which does give some leeway with the luck element, I guess. But still, it's very dependent on what your opponents do here, not really what you do. Number 44, Mega Bloopers Bayside Bop. The worst boss minigame in Mario Party Star Rush, and honestly, it's not even bad, just kind of boring and long. This is treated more like a rhythm game than a boss battle, and while I don't hate rhythm games, I just don't think it's the best idea for this one. Number 43, Shooting Stars. It pains me to have a name like Shooting Stars so much closer to the bottom of the list, but the connection to stars is honestly kind of minimal anyway. This game kind of reminds me of Skee Ball, where you send balls down a lane and try to get them into specific holes for different point values. You can even activate the star hole and send out bonus balls for even more points. Honestly, a decent idea for a minigame, but it can be kind of unpredictable at times, and aiming for the holes you want is definitely no guarantee, especially with other players sending their balls at roughly the same times. Number 42, Pinball Brawl. Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of pinball games, even if this game is part of the incredibly based Coinathlon mode. But hey, even though I'm not crazy about these games, I'd say this is a decent way to represent pinball in the Coin Chaos format. It just kind of gets last place by default, unfortunately, due to the potential pinball luck elements involved. Thankfully, we'll have better games to come for this mode. Number 41, Bowser's Fence Fury. Another Bowser Gauntlet game, another basic survival game. Really, this one gets higher just for being more manageable than the previous one. Number 40, Bowser's Fire Hazard. And the final Bowser Gauntlet game is the most manageable. Kinda gives me vibes of Funsticle Course from Mario Party 7, but still a very basic survival exercise. Honestly, these 3 games are fine for what they are. They're just not very groundbreaking or interesting in retrospect, which gets them stuck kinda closer to the bottom of this list. Number 39, PD Piranha's Shell Smackdown. This is definitely more in line with what we've come to expect from boss minigames, but I have to admit, I'm not too impressed with this one. Not only can it be awkward to aim your shells from this over-the-top perspective, but with other players attacking simultaneously, getting the exact hit you want and when you want it is no guarantee, as your shell may not end up colliding with the beast, either through invincibility frames or even colliding with another shell or player. Also, Petey can be a little wild and unpredictable with his movements too, catching you off guard in other ways and making this kind of an underwhelming boss experience. Number 38, Kamek's Card Tricks. There always seems to be a memory boss game in these boss battle collections, so even though it's a little different from the standard, I wouldn't say it's unexpected. Anyway, this game is fine, but it is kind of handicapped by the AI ally system of Star Rush, where you control what card you pick, but not what your allies pick, so they may end up costing you some points in this one, which is a bit frustrating. Also, just a very long game too. Number 37, Goomba Guess. Another memory game, but this one kind of has the opposite problem of the last one, as this one almost goes a bit too quick. You have to memorize the location of the 12 Goombas, trying to avoid the Galoombas. And then, when the game starts, after some minor shuffling, you have to correctly select as many Goombas as possible, competing against other players in the same playing field. Every Goomba you guess gives you a point, while an incorrect Galoomba will make you lose one. Everyone sharing the same field does make this one a little less desirable for me, as you may get caught off guard by what the other players go for first. Not to mention, why is this only one round? I mean, the game isn't too bad, but it could have been so much better. Number 36, Bowser's Hit or Missile Mania. Bowser's not gonna like this low of a ranking, but thankfully he has 3 Bowser boss minigames in this title. This one is just the weakest one. Also, I'm tempted to say it's a button masher, because at the core it is, but you do have to pace yourself and prepare the shield when you're en route to being attacked, so it has a little more going for it. Number 35, Mega Monty Moles in the Hole. Another boss button masher, although it's less of a button masher and more of just trying to get as many attacks in when you have the opportunity to. You can kind of get screwed over by mole RNG in this one, as the moles pop up randomly in the 7 holes with only 1 correct answer per round. But I don't think that's a huge deal breaker. It's also a little unbalanced depending on ally distribution, if that does happen to be a thing. Number 34, Touch Fuzzy, Get Dizzy. I love the name for this game for very obvious reasons, but pretty much we go from some button mashers to stylus spinners. Really for this one, you spin the stylus on the touchscreen to make your platform ascend until you get to the very top. Along the way you have to dodge fuzzies that will get in your way. This makes the game at least better than a brain-dead spam fest, but I wouldn't say this game is particularly extraordinary either. Just fine for what it is, I guess. I do love that name though. Excellent A-tier name for a minigame. Number 33, Bridge Saw Puzzle. A test of spotting and selecting the right piece in the correct order sequence faster than your other opponents. There are 3 rounds to this game too, which does open up the results to some variance, but I swear the last round can be very difficult with a multitude of similar looking pieces to choose from, and with other players choosing from the same stock of bridge pieces. Definitely a game that benefits getting a good start in, especially if you struggle with the brutal round 3 gauntlet. Number 32, Silver Lining. Hey look, another Coinathlon game, and this one is pretty decent too. You'd probably expect this one to be a bit higher on the list since it is largely platforming based, but it can feel rather too bouncy at times, and getting all the coins in a specific area can be difficult if the cloud placement is not ideal. So while it's definitely not the best, it's at least average at worst. Number 31, House of Booze. I hope Pac-Man doesn't send Mario a cease and desist letter for the creation of this minigame. I know it looks like Mario and his pals are going through a Pac-Man level here, but at least they have their own spin on it. Anyway, this game is actually a pretty neat idea, just with some slight iffy execution. Your characters almost move too fast, making turning kinda difficult, and depending on coin and boo placement, you may have a hard time grabbing coins without getting captured by the ghost in the process. Kind of one of those, when it works well, it feels really good, but again, only when it works well. Otherwise, it's just fine. Number 30, Mega Goomba's Bad Dream. So we aren't taking out a boss in this game, rather just stealing fruit from it. How devious. The goal of this game is to bring as much fruit as you can back to the starting line, each apple being 1 point. However, you can actually bring back multiple apples at a time instead of just one for a single trip. The catch is that when you're carrying more than 1 apple, You'll move a lot slower, and it's easier to get hit by the other patrolling Goombas in the process, which will slow you down even more. I typically still try to go for 3 apples at a time though. It just works for me, and I do like to flex to all the ladies out there with my epic fruit carrying skills. Man, Slim Bowser has really rubbed off on me, hasn't he? Anyway, this game is fine. Not the most exciting boss minigame, but I can't really say anything is wrong with it either. Number 29, King Bob-omb's Boom-Bi-Ta. King Bob-omb hasn't had the best luck with boss minigames, but I think this one is pretty good for what it is. He'll drop a bunch of Bob-ombs on you, and you need to carry them to the cannons spread around the arena before they explode. However, once you use a cannon, it will disappear for a bit before you can use it again. So you have to be aware of what's available to you in each phase. Also, with the potential of a lot of allies, opponents, and opponent allies in this, it can get pretty chaotic. Plus, some of the bombs will have shorter fuses, so you have to look out for that too. There is a bit of luck involved with this one too, depending on where bombs drop as well, and if you are in the vicinity, but the game is still pretty enjoyable despite those hang-ups, at least for me anyway. Number 28, Mega Dry Bones Femur Fever. Very simple boss minigame. You just ground pound on your plunger until you fire your cannonball, while also jumping over bone obstacles. It's really that simple and a fine game for what it is. And that's really all I have to say about it. Number 27, Rolls for Moles. Remember Goomba Bowling from Mario Party 9? The game where you had to roll something at a very specific timing window to get a great deal of points? This is a much more simplistic version of that concept, and I actually kind of prefer this minigame to Goomba Bowling, honestly. The fact there are multiple rounds and smaller margins of error just make this more appealing to me. Nothing amazing, but I appreciate the game nonetheless. Number 26, Splatastamp. And on the subject of modifying concepts from other games, we have this one, which kind of reminds me of Stamp Out from Mario Party 4 and Flinger Painting from Mario Party 9. Although for this one, I admittedly prefer the predecessors here. This one isn't too bad though, just harder to land your shots in the general locations you're probably aiming for, which could make the results a little more unpredictable. I still enjoy it though, and it can be pretty fun to see what the colored picture looks like at the end of the minigame. Number 25, Lava Labyrinth. I really struggled with where to put this one, as when this one goes wrong, it can be quite the frustration. However, I do really like the idea for this game. You have a maze of paths with 4 pedestals at the end, each one featuring a prize of varying merits, basically deciding your placement in this minigame. You obviously want to aim for the best prize, but you have to be the first one to get there, since if someone gets there before you, you'll have to make do with one of the other prizes. And depending on where the other players are, you may get stuck with last place if you aren't careful. That scenario can be quite the bummer when it happens, especially if it seems like you and another player arrive at the first place prize at the same time and it randomly chooses the other player instead of you. Something that actually happened in my Let's Play. As a result, it's probably in your best interest to memorize the path of not just the biggest prize, but also second place as well, just so you can change your course if it looks like you may get overtaken. This does add a pretty nice layer of strategy to this game, and part of the reason why I wanted to give it a bit of a break, despite my many frustrating misses with this one. Hey, it still made the upper half of the list after all. It can also be kinda tricky to navigate around the Blarg-like enemies as well, so be wary of that fact too. Number 24, One Stop Toad Shop. I would not be surprised if you get reminded of Kirby in the Forgotten Lands restaurant minigame with this one, as it's kind of the same idea. Basically, you have a bunch of Toad customers that you need to provide orders for, and the faster you deliver those specific orders, the more bonus points and coins you get. This can get pretty chaotic, especially on the higher levels when more complicated orders get added and the customers are more demanding. However, despite the possibility of getting overwhelmed, I do feel like the game is still pretty fair, especially considering that you don't really even need to do the orders in order either. Just do your best and try to get as many coins as possible. Number 23, Cheap Cheap Reach. Okay, I'm warning you guys right now, be prepared to see a lot of coinathlon here. Most of these games are pretty solid and of very similar quality due to the nature of coinathlon and the stakes involved with it. There are still some games that push beyond this quality, but we'll obviously get to those later. Anyway, for this game, you're fishing for Cheep Cheeps, or really just anything that isn't the spiky Porcupuffers. You aim your crosshair with the control stick, and then hold the A button to grow your glove, and then release it to cast it forward. The bigger your glove, the more fish you can potentially grab in one cast, but also the bigger your hitbox gets. So again, remember to watch out for those puffer fish. The aiming can feel a little off at times for this one, but I don't feel like it hinders things too much. It's a pretty easy game to play and understand for the most part. Number 22, Steel Diver. Yeah, Nintendo had to reference that 3DS launch title in some way, I guess. And the fact that you even use submarines for this game, the irony is not lost on me there either. Anyway, this game kind of feels like a spiritual sequel to Deep Sea Salvage from Mario Party 2, which was already a spiritual sequel to Treasure Divers from Mario Party 1. So, what an interesting underwater journey we've been on, huh? Anyway, you don't have to worry about dealing with other players taking your coins here, thankfully. Just focus on your own games and try to get as many coins as possible. The controls are pretty nice and fluid, and it's a pretty chill game to get in Coinathlon. Number 21, Goomba's Gold Rush. Well, if pinball games were going to be used for Coinathlon, I suppose an arcade-like shooter minigame, one that reminds me of Space Invaders, would feel right at home as well. This game is pretty fun, albeit maybe a bit difficult to master. The more consecutive shots you get on your targets, whether they are Goombas, Bob-ombs, or just stray coins, will give you a combo boost, but sometimes it can be pretty easy to lose your combo without realizing, or if you're too efficient with your enemy clearing. However, when you aren't going for high scores in the Coin Chaos mode, that shouldn't matter too much. Just focus on shooting as much as you can to get as many coins as possible. Number 20, Conveyor Meltdown. Yep, more Coinathlon, but I gotta say, I really appreciate this game because this feels like a much better version of Mario Party 8's Eye on the Prize, a game that really tests your reflexes to the extreme when sorting miscellaneous objects. However, in that game, it goes absolutely crazy at the end, making for a head-exploding experience, at least for me anyway. For this minigame, I think it's actually pretty easy to follow, even if you have multiple mushrooms on screen, since there's really only 2 colors for the shrooms to fall in. So if you focus on the bottom rows and the mushrooms that are furthest ahead, you can pretty easily get them in the correct containers one at a time. Sometimes the items may get off sync, but thankfully you don't need to be perfect with it. Just a pretty solid and easygoing experience. At least more so than its predecessor anyway. Number 19, Roller Revenge. Another survival game, but hey, I feel like this one has some nice potential just because I don't think we've seen one like this quite yet. Or maybe we have, there have been a lot of Mario parties we've looked at so far. But still, it's nice to see one utilizing the spike enemies that throw spiky logs instead of spike balls from Super Mario 3D World. Plus, the extra health and hit points acting as not only a buffer before elimination, but also a way to break ties. Honestly, a solid good feature. There's definitely some games in the past that I wish utilized this. Number 18, Acorn Utopia. This game kinda reminds me of Goomba to Maneuver from Island Tour, except the line of Goombas that follow you are replaced with a plate of acorns. Basically a test to see if you can make it to the end without losing anything, or losing as few acorns as possible. I think the game does lose a little bit of charm from its predecessor though, plus it's easy for opponents to bully a single player by constantly getting in their way and pushing them around, since the screen can get pretty crowded at times. Aside from that though, it's still a pretty fun game. Number 17, Parkour War. I hope you guys are ready for some hardcore parkour, because that's what we got here. Or at the very least, this game's vertical platforming racing minigame. Honestly, this one is pretty good, and I do like the added novelty of requiring 3 trips instead of 1 to counter the possibility of having a bad start. However, it can be difficult if another player keeps getting in your way, and in some places there's not a lot of room to avoid that either, so you kinda have to power through that to have a great experience with this one. Number 16, Haunted Hallways. This is how you do a luck-based minigame. Yeah, you have to do some guesswork to find the right path, but as long as you pay attention to the beginning and what you're looking for in possible connecting rooms, this one can be fun to play. kind of reminds me of Ghost in the Hall from Mario Party 7, but with circular chambers instead of hallways. But see everyone, I don't hate luck-based minigames. I just think that they should have an additional layer of mental skill that you can use to overcome that luck factor, as shown in this game. So I'm not incredibly biased against them, I just want something more from them. That's all. Number 15, Bumper Bugs. I do kind of question the stylus controls for this one, only because they seem a little unneeded, but I can't deny that they work just fine, and overall, this game is a nice and quick test of skill that doesn't overstay its welcome. Just do your best to navigate your insect mobile to each of the flags as quickly as possible. That easy, that simple, but still very fun. That's really all you need. Number 14, Top It Off. On the subject of short and sweet exercises, we have this game, where all you have to do is just press the button on the correct piece that matches the piece in the middle. And you do this for several rounds too, so don't worry, it's not like a 2-second minigame or anything. There's not really much challenge to this, as the correct piece is gonna be pretty obvious. Heck, I was probably tested on this kind of mental puzzle exercise as a preschooler, but you do have to pay attention to what buttons are assigned to each of the images, as there are only 4 options, but 6 possible buttons, and the buttons will swap out of different locations. In other words, don't get too used to the A button being on the far left, when it could end up being on the far right in the next round. In other words, make sure you know your 3DS button layout before playing this minigame. Also, be warned that you only get credit in this game for being the first to select the right answer. No partial credit for second, third, or fourths here. Not a big issue to me, but kinda strange, as this was the age where this kind of mentality didn't really happen anymore. Number 13, Pop Quiz. I guess we're currently in the mental puzzle part of this list or something, because here we have a pop quiz. Basically, you're given a group of 4 characters, and in each round, you're given a question that applies to the grouping of characters you just saw. That question can be as simple as, where was this character? Or a little more involved, like, which character was waving slowly? And the future rounds will likely have various copies of the same character too, making it a little more tough. That's good though, because it makes the game a little less dependent on reflexes and more on your memorization skills, which I do approve of. Also, unlike the last game, you do get credit for the correct answer, even if you aren't the first one to guess it right. You just won't get as many points, that's all. Number 12, Fruit Parade. Yep, this is truly the mental puzzle part of the list, as we have another memory game. Although, probably less of a memory game and more of a note-taking game. There were a few minigames that used this note-taking feature in Island Tour, and I honestly thought that was a good implementation. For this game, you have to keep track of all the fruit that you will ultimately see on the screen, and I mean all of it. After all the characters come by, you have to guess how many pieces of each fruit were shown, and the player that has the most accurate guess will be the winner. How you take notes of this information will ultimately lead to your success here. I honestly feel the simple number tally system works fine, but some might be pressed to do their note-taking in a different way, and that's fine too, as the game definitely allows for that variety. Also, while this does seem simple, perhaps a bit too simple at times, the Shy Guys do have different varieties and portions of fruit on display here, and balancing all that info at once, I could see being a challenge for some. So this is by no means a free minigame. I do have fun with it though, and I do think it's a nice test of your mental skills. Number 11, Bowser Jr.'s Pound for Pound. Jr. hasn't had the greatest track record for boss minigames, although, after thinking about it, I guess he's only had one before this, and that was easily one of the worst games that Mario Party 9 had to offer. This game really lifted the bar up though, considering how close this was to making the top 10. You're basically racing to pound all the lit up buttons on the arena while dodging Junior's assault in the process. For each button you pound, you get a point, and some buttons are worth more points the closer they are to the little scamp. Once all the buttons are pressed, Junior will enter his rage mode, and then you do it again. Once all of them are claimed a second time, the giant button in the center of the arena will light up, allowing a player to take the final strike against the little prince. Once he gets out of the way, of course. I just think this game controls and functions pretty well, and I also like how you have an ongoing way of keeping track of the game's current progression too. Basically, if the HP meter isn't at the halfway point or at the bottom yet, you know there are still some buttons available in the arena. And you can kind of play this strategically too, to see if you can prepare yourself for getting the giant button at the end that will lead to the finishing attack, which is worth quite a number of points, and is, well, definitely more than the single stray point that you get on the perimeter otherwise. Definitely not the best boss minigame, but hey, I give it props for doing a solid job of being on par with a nice number of the solid ones, and in some cases, actually being better than a majority of them. Number 10. We're reaching the end of our countdown ever so surely, so it's about lights out for Mario Party Star Rush. But let's keep those lights on for the moment, because here at number 10, we have King Boo's Light Smite. King Boo has had a very interesting history when it comes to boss minigames, having easily the best one in Mario Party 9, a not so great one in Mario Party 10, but jumping back in the driver's seat here in Mario Party Star Rush. I like this game because it has an interesting premise and some nice platforming elements, leading to a pretty solid experience overall. Welcome back, King Boo. We've missed you up here. Number 9. Someone else who we've missed up here was none other than the King of Koopas himself. Hit or Missile Mania wasn't exactly a winner by any means, but Bowser's shocking slip-up, on the other hand, is a much different story. Heck, if anything, this game kind of reminds me of Lakitu's boss minigame from Mario Party 9. You jump to hit boxes and try to send lightning at the giant Bowser robot in front of you to get points. However, if you don't time your jumps properly, you'll pop out a banana peel instead that will seemingly do nothing. However, other players can slip on that banana peel, so don't rule its usefulness out entirely. Meanwhile, while you're doing this, Bowser is sending countless attacks at you, and you also just need to look out for the other players as well, who can get in your way and potentially steal your boxes before you get to them. The game seems pretty chaotic, but it's a controlled chaos, and I honestly don't mind that as much. Heck, when I play this game, I honestly just move in a giant circle, never stopping unless I have to, and just keep striking boxes along the way, adding up my points and trying to be as efficient as possible with my movements. It's a pretty fun experience and definitely one of the best games Star Rush has to offer. Number 8. I know it's pretty easy to be reminded of other Mario Party minigames when looking at a lot of these minigames in particular. I mean, come on, there have been 13 titles before this one. However, when I think of this minigame, I'm a little more prone to thinking about Kirby 64 and its multiplayer minigame 100-Yard Hop. Jump to Conclusion is pretty much a play on the whole. You have two jumps, a big jump and a small jump. The big jump covers more distance, but sometimes you have to do a short jump first to do a long jump over a particular obstacle. Otherwise, you'll hit that obstacle and waste time while your opponents navigate around it. You have to think about your progression here a few steps in advance, and prepare for what's coming up. That way, you can move fast and beat all of your enemies to the finish line. And probably to no one's surprise, this is also a new record minigame, so it's also a game that's fun to try and optimize and see how fast of a time you can get, giving this game a layer of replayability as well. It's short and sweet, but pretty solid as well. Number 7. Yeah, I'm not really surprised to see some Coinathlon here in the top 10. Coinathlon was just a really great side mode, and I'd love to see them tackle it again sometime in the future. Rolling Rumble is the game we're talking about here, and, well, I guess it just wouldn't be Mario Party without having a game with characters rolling on a ball, huh? Anyway, in classic Bumper Balls fashion, your goal here is to try and knock out as many enemies as possible, getting coins for each KO. If you fall off yourself, you take some time to respawn, but you ultimately keep going until the time is up. The thing I like about this iteration of Bumper Balls is that you actually have a button you can use to build momentum up and launch yourself forward, giving you a more offensive maneuver to knock out the enemies. So you don't have to worry about getting held up or stalemated. Honestly, my one issue with Bumper Balls in the original Mario Party game. It's a very solid Coinathlon game, but considering we're only in the bottom half of the top 10, well, let's just say there could still be more to come. Number 6. This one might be a bit surprising, seeing it's so far up the list when it's honestly not much on paper. Heck, even I'm a little surprised by this ranking. But, hey, is anyone up for a piece of cake? This is another mental game where you are given a gander at the innards of a sweet dessert, and based on the location of certain fruits in the cake, and a given set of cutting spots, you have to guess which slicing line gives you a piece that matches the sample provided by the Shy Guy. You do this for 3 rounds, and the rounds get significantly tougher each time, with each one adding more fruit to the cake and more places to cut as well. So you really have to pay attention to where certain fruits are located. I personally don't think it's that hard, but even I have tripped up on occasion, so it's definitely not a free and easy exercise. It is, however, a pretty fun minigame that I personally really enjoy, and I'm feeling pretty confident with having it this far up the list personally. Number 5. We haven't had an amazing shooting gallery game in a while, and true, with less focus on motion control, I imagine there's a reason for that. However, even without that aspect, I think you can still come up with something good, and I think Piranha Plantamonium fits that mold perfectly. In this game, you just move your vehicle left and right and aim at the piranha plants in front of you. It's pretty simple and might seem pretty basic, but I don't know. This one feels fun to play, and it does feel pretty balanced as well, for a game that could have easily not been so. Just focus hard on those golden piranha plants though, as they are worth more points and could be the deciding factor for an intense game of this nature. But yeah, it's a really fun game and definitely one of the best this title has to offer. Number 4. Only one character in this series can be deserving of practically owning 3 different boss minigames, and if you want to count the Gauntlet games, it's technically 6. But regardless of that technicality, at the top of this grouping of games, and my pick for the best boss minigame, I have none other than Bowser's Space Race. This is just a creative idea for a boss minigame because I just don't think we've had anything like this before. It's a mad dash to launch a missile at the Koopa King's mech while making tight turns and avoiding obstacles. The first player that arrives and touches the Mega Mushroom will do more damage, but as long as you make it to the end, you'll do some damage at least. It kind of reminds me of some of those Rock Mario sections in Mario Galaxy 2, or just any kind of linear and vehicular obstacle course in other 3D platformers. Really nice change of pace for a boss minigame, and the one that comes to mind for me the most in Mario Party Star Rush. At least for good reasons, anyway. Number 3. For those keeping track of all the minigames that haven't been mentioned yet, yes, I wasn't joking earlier when I said Coinathlon set a very high bar here. In the number 3 position, we have Leafboard Horde. Funnily enough, another minigame that reminds me of a section in Mario Galaxy 2. This time, Tall Trunk Galaxy and its Tree Slide. For this game, you surf down a wooden course on a leaf and try to get as many coins as possible, dodging obstacles and taking barrel cannons for even more coinage, some of which have more coins than others, so you have to pay attention if you want the largest payouts. It's honestly a pretty fun game to not only play, but also try to optimize in the coin chaos mode for a high score. Gotta say, the developers really had something good here. Not just the minigame, but also how well it works for the Coinathlon mode in general. Number 2. What separates 3rd and 2nd place for me is nothing more than the slightest of preferences for one style over the other, because my silver medal goes to Samurai Smackdown. This Coinathlon game is, once again, really heavy on optimization, as you try to knock out all the enemies heading to your location, each one at a slightly different elevation level, requiring you to strike them with a different swing of your hammer, whether it's high or low. And on the higher levels, bullet bills will join the fray as well, which move at a different speed from the flying swoops, so you have to be prepared for them whenever they decide to sneak in on you. When you're on a good rhythm, this game can be incredibly fun to play, and I have absolutely no qualms with it being in my top 3. Number 1. I have to say it, guys, Coinathlon is king in this game. Not only is it an incredibly fun mode, but so many of the minigames are absolutely fantastic. And for my number 1, I have to give it to Tiles and Tribulations. Now, on the surface, this may just seem like another Bejeweled parody game, something that was kind of already done in other Mario Party games, but the fact that this version combines the outer metrics of Coinathlon in the fold, while also just being a fun standalone puzzle game to try and get high scores for outside of the main Coinathlon mode, I mean, it's really just made with the best intentions in mind. I'm always hoping for this game in the Coinathlon rotation as it is, because it's fun by itself, but this game also kind of doubles as the game's de facto puzzle game too, which is also really neat. And not to mention way better than the actual puzzle game the game tries to add as a main game mode. Puzzle games like this excel in Mario Party, and although I haven't had too many at the top of these lists, Tiles and Tribulations is one I think is more than worthy of being my favorite minigame in Mario Party Star Rush. Shoutouts to the rest of the top 3 though, because this was honestly a really hard top spot to figure out, and honestly all 3 could have been contenders for this on different days. This game just checked an extra box for me, and that's why I'm naming it the king of this list here. And there we go, guys, another Mario Party game down, and I admittedly had fun seeing how this list played out. I think one thing that was very telling for this list is how each game genre, whether it was free-for-all, boss, or coin-athlon, was pretty equally represented in the top 10. And even games I would have given a 3 out of 5 to were still as far down as 40th place, so this game definitely had some quality here. If I had to place the other minigames, or the minigames side games if you will, I'd probably put them all under the halfway point. Maybe the Challenge Tower and Rhythm Recitals somewhere around 35th to 40th, and Boo's Block Party somewhere in the low to mid 40s. Challenge Tower, while a neat Minesweeper idea, can be really slow and repetitive, especially on the longer iterations. Rhythm Recital, while having some fun tracks to play, is really just pressing the same button over and over again. Block Party is just kind of a very bland puzzle game, doesn't even come close to matching the awesomeness of our number 1 minigame, and feels like it's just kind of there. So really, I don't feel bad for not including these 3. So, with Star Rush done, we only have one more 3DS Mario Party game to go, and, well, we have the big list coming, folks, because next is Mario Party the Top 100. That's right, a Mario Party game with 100 minigames to rank. Oh boy. Thankfully, these are games we've played before, so I won't have too much extra to say about them, but considering they are being played on a much different system, there could be some variants that might make the results a little more interesting. Not to mention, I'm sure we'll have a lot of classics battling against each other, and even some number 1s from previous lists competing against other number 1s, which should be very fun to watch. Even if it is my least favorite Mario Party game, this is a list that I don't think you're going to want to miss. Something else you may not want to miss is that I'm currently playing Mario Party every Friday on my Twitch channel for a series called Thank God It's Mario Party Friday. For this season of the series, I'm tackling all the story and single-player modes, some of which I haven't even showcased for my YouTube channel yet, so come by if you want a slightly different Mario Party experience. I'm currently in the GameCube era right now, but we still have plenty of modes to get through, so be sure to stop on by and cheer me on if you get a chance on Fridays. And a reminder, these streams start at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern Daylight Time, depending on when the hell you're watching this anyway. Dumb daylight savings time. And with that, I think it's time we rush on out of here. Thank you guys for watching, it's been a pleasure as always, and I'll see you fine folk next time. Later guys, and remember, never forget to party on. Bye bye.